members present in the auditorium. Today, this may be a last session of this auditorium, but this is a very important session as it concerns with the prevention of the diseases as well as management, and it is related to our lifestyle. And for this session, we have got Professor Dr. R.K. Katiyar sir, ex-director JK Cancer Institute, as a chairperson. Dr. Katiyar sir. We have Professor Anand Kumar, Department of Pharmacology, KGMU. May I please may I please ask him to come over the stage? Professor Anand Kumar. For this session, we have a very renowned speaker, Professor Teeshan Bahroon, who is Chair in Applied Biochemistry, ND, Center for Excellence, Biomedical and Biomedical Research, University of Mauritius. May I request Professor Teeshan Bahroon, please come on the stage. So as I have already mentioned this, there was a time when we were having diseases like communicable diseases. Most of the time they were the infectious diseases. Which were number one cause of mortality and morbidity in countries like ours. However, the time has changed, and now we have got non-communicable diseases which are emerging as number one cause of mortality and morbidity, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer. So these are the diseases which are taking place of the communicable disease in our world. And what is responsible? Responsible is the change in the lifestyle. And diet is one part of the lifestyle which is getting changed. Therefore, we have also, it is a known fact that lifestyle factors like nutrition play a very important part in the prevention of the diseases which we basically say the lifestyle diseases. And functional foods based on their basic characteristics have not only been found to decrease the risk of developing these diseases, but they are helpful in the management of these diseases. Therefore, without wasting much time, I now invite Professor Teeshan Bahroon to please elaborate more on this topic of functional foods.
It gives me great pleasure to be back in Kanpur. In fact, I've been working with CSGM Kanpur for a number of years now, and this was initiated when my good friend Ashok Kumar was Vice Chancellor of CSGM Kanpur. I came to Kanpur under the C.V. Raman Award, and we started some work on cancer with one of the students. I don't know if she's here, Shalini Verma, who was at the biotechnology department. So we did some work together, operating cancer research work, and this has led to other works where have been exchange of students with CSGM Kanpur and University of Mauritius. So in my presentation today, I will talk about functional foods, nutraceuticals, and how they could contribute alternatively to the management of diabetes and cancer, and showing you some of the molecular works that were done here at CSGM Kanpur, and also in University of Mauritius, and also in hospitals. So, topics which are indeed of interest to me and my group is diabetes, cancer, marine pharmaceuticals. Why marine pharmaceuticals? Because I live on a small island, Mauritius, which is surrounded by sea, and has about 2.4 million square kilometers of sea still untapped, still to be exploited. Why diabetes? Well, this is now a big problem, not only for Mauritius, where we have 24% of population is diabetic, but also for India, where India stands to be among the 10 countries in the world with a highest level of diabetes. Cancer also is a big issue. Some few years back, we were around 9% of cancer in Mauritius. Now we are nearing the 14% mark of cancer in Mauritius. So these diseases are progressing so rapidly, and these are the areas where we have started research some time ago, and where we are pursuing our efforts. So, talking about nutraceuticals, functional foods, we all know that these foods have antioxidant properties, antioxidant propensities because of their innate phytochemicals. But what is most important is the knowledge of these specific constituents, their action mechanism, their clinical effects. These are very important to maximize health benefits. So this slide I just alluded to, showing diabetes. The percentage of diabetes prevalence in Mauritius is about 22.8%. And mind you, for every diabetic patient we have in Mauritius, we have a pre-diabetic subject awaiting. So this brings this percentage to nearly 45% of the Mauritian population, which is potentially diabetic, which is enormous. It is an enormous burden on government, enormous burden on the people. And if you look at the table above, you see just below China is India, second place in the world with diabetes. So how are functional foods beneficial for health? We are, in fact, prone to diseases, and these diseases are caused by oxidative stress. We can name these diseases. 99% of these diseases, of all diseases, are prone due to oxidative stress. Reactive oxygen species, free radicals, are responsible for these particular diseases. So neurodegenerative diseases, diabetes, cancer, CVD, pulmonary and rheumatoid diseases are all being involved with respect to reactive oxygen species and free radicals. And functional foods and nutraceuticals have the ability to reduce the incidence of these diseases by mopping out the free radical and reactive oxygen species. Regards to diabetes, there have been a lot of works going on regards to, in fact, functional foods. So here you have some of the publications which highlight the efficacies of certain foods, functional foods, against diabetes. Here you have a number of beverages. Some of them I will be coming back to these works later on. These are our initial studies in Mauritius, where we started to look at our exotic fruits, our vegetables, our beverages, in terms of antioxidant capacity and potential to be functional foods to mitigate diabetic processes or cancer processes. And one of these papers clearly show that two of these citrus fruits, tango and tangelo, could be interesting regards to their ability to scavenge advanced glycated end products in diabetes. So this was the first time where we showed that two specific citrus fruits have the ability to have beneficial properties against diabetes. We have a Mauritian black tea as well. This morning I was talking to the Kanpur Press, highlighting the effects of black tea. We have, in fact, isolated chemicals from our black tea in Mauritius, which have the potential, indeed, to be very good functional food, functional beverages. And this has brought us to conduct clinical trials in hospitals with cardiovascular disease patients. And we highlighted for the first time, our group highlighted for the first time that uric acid and C-reactive protein could be managed efficaciously by taking 3 cups of black tea per day in cardiovascular diseases with regards to diabetes as well, because many diabetic patients will develop cardiovascular disease. And also, we clearly indicated that in a normal population, drinking 3 cups of tea per day could reduce the level of glucose in the blood, triglyceride, and indeed decrease the LDL-HDL ratio while increasing our antioxidant capacity. And this was taken up in an article published in PLOS ONE, which in fact showed the, I would say, but our study, the seriousness of our study in terms of methodology with more than 300 patients. With regards to diabetes, we conducted a clinical trial with green tea. The difference between green tea and black tea is that black tea is fermented tea, whereas green tea is not fermented. And the chemicals that we have in green tea are not oxidized, whereas in black tea, you have more polymerized compounds than in green tea. So we conducted this assay using green tea and showed, and the population that we chose to do this study were pre-diabetic subjects. In fact, these subjects were clear from any drugs. So whatever results came from that study were not the result of any interference of any drugs that the patient could have been taken. So here we show clearly that HbA1c, LDL cholesterol, and total cholesterol are decreased. And we are also increasing the total antioxidant status of these subjects. Another clinical trial we conducted using fermented papaya. Fermented papaya is obtained after, in fact, having papaya with yeast and having the result that fermented papaya have additional antioxidant chemicals which can be beneficial for health. So we conducted a clinical trial with 200 pre-diabetic subjects and showed that there was a decrease in arterial blood pressure, LDL cholesterol, uric acid for the man, C-reactive protein for the man, and total antioxidant status. In fact, during that study, we measured more than 15 biomarkers. But I would like to walk you through one particular study that we're just completing, is pomegranate. In Hindi, pomegranate is anar. And we have, in fact, we take anar in form of fruit juice, or we can eat with seeds. Quite good to eat. But in this study, we are looking at the mesocarp, the whitish part in anar, which we do not eat, which we throw away. So this is that part that we try to study and to see if there were any biochemicals that could be interesting. So if we look at diabetes, diabetes is hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia induces glycation, and glycation induces the production of advanced glycated end products. So these advanced glycated end products are taken up by specific receptors on the cell, which is the AGE receptor, and this is going to create oxidative stress, NF-kappa B activation, and exacerbate markers for diabetes, causing pro-inflammatory cytokines and vascular adhesion molecules. So our aim, in fact, one of these receptors is the CD36 receptor. It's a very interesting receptor, which is an AGE receptor. The AGE receptor is overexpressed in presence of AGEs. It is pro-atherogenic. It is implicated in insulin resistance, in dyslipidemia, and it downregulates leptin expression. So it is a very important receptor which exacerbates the condition of diabetes. Coming back to our pomegranate extract, We eat the seeds, we drink the juice, but we do not eat the mesocarp. And there are not many studies which have highlighted the importance of the mesocarp in literature. So we looked at that particular part, pomegranate mesocarp. And our objectives was to see whether pomegranate mesocarp could influence certain pathways that lead to diabetes. So let's see. First of all, we looked at the phenolic richness of the mesocarp and saw that it contained quite a lot of phenolics, quite a lot of flavonoids, quite a lot of hydrolyzable tannin and proanthocyanidin. And indeed, these proanthocyanidin, the more you have hydroxyl function, the more it will be antioxidant. So we measured the antioxidant capacities of the mesocarp extract in various systems that we developed in our lab, and indeed showed, well, this is not coming, well, the antioxidant capacity results are not coming. So what we did also afterwards, we looked in 3T3L1 pre-adipocytes the effect of the PME extract to show that the pomegranate mesocarp extract decreases reactive oxygen species in these cells. So here you have the pomegranate mesocarp extract co-treated in pre-adipocyte, but in presence of BSA, which is a natural antioxidant, the level of OS goes down, but in presence of BSA, which is methyl glyoxyl, which shows the presence of advanced glycated end products, and in presence of H2O2, which is an initiator of reacting oxygen species, when we put our pomegranate mesocarp extract, it is reduced. So these graphs show clearly that pomegranate mesocarp extract have the ability to decrease reactive oxygen species. These are the statistical data. Also, we showed that PME, pomegranate mesocarp extract, have the ability to reduce oxidatively modified protein in the same type of cells that we studied. So we show clearly that the protein carbonylation products and AOPP products are extensively reduced in the presence of PME. The intrinsic antioxidant enzymes, that is glutathione peroxidase, catalase, are all increased in the presence of pomegranate mesocarp extract, showing clearly that the extract has a positive modulatory effect on these antioxidant enzymes. Now, we come to the CD36 expression. You remember we talked about the AGE getting on a particular receptor, and in diabetic conditions, these receptors are present in high concentration. So, what we wanted to show is whether pomegranate extract could mitigate the production of such receptors. Indeed, we showed using molecular techniques that PMA has the ability to downregulate CD36 expression. So in the presence of these extracts, we do not have formation of these receptors, so we diminish the exacerbation of diabetic conditions. So our data on pomegranate clearly show that it inhibits various molecular pathways which leads to diabetic conditions. Second topic, in fact, we talked about cancer chemoprevention. This, as I indicated earlier, is becoming a big problem in Mauritius, where we are nearing the 14% mark, and also worldwide. And there are a number of herbal drugs which have been, in fact, proposed against MNU-induced cancer. And I come to the work that we carried out here in CSGM Kanpur. Shalini Varma sitting right there. She's the one that started the work in collaboration with our team. And we showed that N-methyl N-nitrosourea, which is MNU, has the ability to alter DNA structure in hepatocarcinogenesis. So this was the first work that we initiated here in Kanpur. And the second work was to assess the effect of Aegle marmelos, which is the bay leaf, which is used in Indian temple to put on the shivling. And we showed clearly that Aegle marmelos extract had the power to decrease pro-inflammatory cytokines, to modulate blood count, and also we showed through Raman spectroscopy the protective effect of the bay leaf extract. And we showed also in this paper that the mechanism of action of bay leaf could potentially be apoptosis as one of the protective mechanisms. Another work which was also done here in collaboration with CSGN Kanpur, and also Shalini was involved, is the work on Mauritian mushroom, where we clearly show that Mauritian mushroom has the ability to modulate hepatocarcinogenesis, and this was done in biopsy mice. This is the experimental protocol that was used, and indeed the results are extensive, showing that two particular extracts of mushroom have the ability to increase the immunomodulatory activity, to restore normal growth in mice, and also to prevent hepatocarcinogenesis. Here is a scheme showing PBS-treated mice, normal liver, smooth and even growth of hairs in these mice. MNU-treated mice, the mice are affected. The liver is also very affected. And in the presence of mushroom extract, we restore the liver in terms of nodular formation. So we do not see this nodular formation, this cancer nodular formation in mice that were treated with mushroom extracts. So this was an example of how we started the study, characterizing the phytochemical components in mushrooms, showing that it contained gallic acid, pyrogallol derivatives. We went into the in vitro anti-cancer effects with human liposarcoma cells, also HepG2 cells, in vivo hepatoprotective effects on biopsy mice, again with molecular works, and also modulation of inflammatory cytokines in cellular works. So this shows us a clear picture of a comprehensive work that has been carried out on mushroom extracts. Also, we have done this type of work with regard to fermented papaya, one of my PhD students, and this work was also conducted, some of the work was conducted here in CSGM Kanpur, where we show that the fermented papaya, which was anti-diabetic, had also anti-cancer potential. And this led us to publish a very nice paper, a review paper in Mutation Research, where we showed that diabetes was a potential, was indeed a great potential risk factor for cancer, and the fact that we use fermented papaya as a phytonutraceutical adjunct element to treat diabetes and cancer. Also, we have been working extensively on Mauritian endemic plants. And this was the highlight of our work, which came up not later than April 2019, where Newsweek picked up our study and showed that our endemic plants, 4 of our endemic plants, were in fact very effective against esophageal cancer. So we were a little proud to be cited by Newsweek, putting Mauritius on the world of scientific research, which came up in Newsweek in April 2019, where we showed that Mauritian endemic medicinal plant extract induced G2M phase cell cycle arrest and growth inhibition of esophageal squamous cell carcinoma in vitro. And one of my students, his picture is there, did this work for his PhD. As I have said earlier, we were also very active in marine pharmaceutical research with 2.4 million square kilometers area of sea. Mauritius is a unique biodiversity hotspot. It is also a unique diversity hotspot for filmmaking as well. A lot of Indian films are made in Mauritius, but Mauritius is a hotspot for biodiversity, marine as well, and there are a lot of marine pharmaceuticals which have been developed, not from Mauritian waters, but from other waters. But here we have done some work highlighting that we can have lead compounds from our waters. And this is a review we wrote some time ago showing inducing lead compounds which are isolated from marine organisms of potential relevance in cancer treatment. So we've done some work on cancer cell lines and also compared with normal cell lines with Mauritian sponges. And one of these sponges is Neopetrosia exigua, which has shown great potential to have for pharmaceutical development. And we showed during this work that Neopetrosia exigua had the ability to screen for epigenetic modulators. It is a powerful epigenetic modulator and have high activation potential to reduce some of these epigenetic modulators. By assessing the anti-cancer potential of this particular extract, we also showed that this sponge had antibacterial and antibiotic potentiating activity. So we showed this compared to classical antibiotics such as ampicillin, tetracycline, and chloramphenicol. In fact, using low amounts of these antibiotics in combination with that sponge extract will increase the antimicrobial activity. So that was good news, because in combination with these classical antibiotics, we could use less antibiotics to treat patients. So this is our group at the biopharmaceutical unit. Most of the students you see there have contributed to the works that I have highlighted, just to put in the context of their particular work. So thank you very much for your attention, and I await some of your questions.
Well, excellent presentation and work here at CSGM University, and it was a very pleasant academic and social get-togethers. I have a very simple and basic question about diabetes. Well, we all say, it is also concerned, no problem, the fasting sugar should be 100, less than 100, and PP maybe 100 till 135. But occasionally we get reports that American doctors will say, no, up to 200 is a normal phenomenon. And HbA1c should be, or if it is 7 or 8, is okay. So what actually, is it a fake news or fake advertisement or like that? Or is there any, because earlier also the blood sugar used to be higher, but the moment we said it is less than 100, all the drugs came in and everybody became diabetic. So my basic question is, what exactly, is there any controversy or like that, or is it established something of fake news or something like that?
Ashok, you just mentioned that Americans say that the norm should be higher, but have you been, you've been to California, you've been to the States. Have you drank Coca-Cola there when you go to the fast food? How much tumbler, big tumbler they give you? Well, they seem to be on the high side. But if you look at WHO and also other organizations, they ask you to measure HbA1c. This is quite important because we used to measure only glucose level in blood and also glucose tolerance. Now the norm is to go further down and to use HPLC techniques and to have the level of HbA1c, which should be around 5.86.
That is what we say. But
Yeah.
they say it is up to 7-8 is okay.
7-8 is on the high side. I personally think that 7-8 on the high
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
The pre-diabetic patient that we, in fact, use in the clinical study, pre-diabetic, they were 5.86 to 6.2. So above 6.2 is diabetes for us.
Okay, yeah.
I would like to add something also, because all those known diabetics, they are supposed to keep HbA1c level less than 7%. It is a preferable thing, and even the European guidelines are tighter. They say that it should be less than 6.5%. But it also depends upon the age of the subjects and other comorbidities also.
Yeah.
For elderly people, we do relax this standard, and this may be 7.5% for people who are 65, maybe 70. We don't want them to land up into hypoglycemia times again. So it's absolutely right that for diabetics it must be as tight as possible.
Yeah.
Definitely less than 7%, and if person is able to achieve 6.5%, that is very good, because long-term complications are going to happen, and they depend only on two things: duration of diabetes and degree of control. So that is only.
Yeah, thank you.
So now do we have some other question from the speaker? For the speaker? No. So we have got one question. Please.
Hello. First of all, most welcome, Professor Thishan, and thanks for this enriching talk. I would have one question: that do this anti-diabetic treatment will also work for the cancer prevention?
The work that we carried out on fermented papaya shows clearly that it could mitigate also cancer markers. So being also an anti-diabetic management, I would say biochemical, it could also, as per our work, show mitigate cancer pathways.
But how it is related to anti-diabetes means you have in last slide, you have shown that the diabetes is also related to the cancer because it is showing the continuous inflammation in the pancreas. So it is somehow related to the cancer.
Yeah, this is indeed a particular situation where we have been seeing this in Mauritius mainly, perhaps elsewhere, where the pancreas is in a constant state of inflammation in diabetic patients, and the patient do not die from diabetes but die from pancreatic cancer. This is now more and more common. So using this as background, we try to show that what could be in fermented papaya that could be useful for cancer management. And the results clearly show that, in fact the work was done with you as well, showed that fermented papaya had the ability to modulate hepatocarcinogenesis, which is a good thing. We do not have, in fact, if you look at certain drugs, they have dual purposes, but not many of these drugs have dual purposes. The one that we use to treat diabetes is also a powerful antioxidant.
Thank you.
Sir Amit Kumar also, who is head of the Department of Pharmacology, KGMU, Lucknow. Sir, do you want to add something to this topic?
In diabetes, actually, it is the most important aspect in the diabetic control is the duration of control. Many times people take anti-diabetic drugs and it is very well controlled, and after some time they don't monitor it. Then it goes, the HbA1c goes above 7, and they remain 7, 8, and then suddenly they again get it controlled and comes below 6.5. All the long-term complications, they occur as per the control of the diabetes. And most of the time, if the people take care properly, then long-term complications can be very well prevented. In diabetes, diet, as the speaker has already given so much detailed version of the dietary supplements. This is really very important, and many times we are taking those diets which are not good or rather bad, and but we don't know because of our ignorance. We continue taking those dietary supplements, particularly the fruits. Fruits, we think that they are very good, but many of the fruits, they contain very high concentration of the fructose and sucrose, and it increases the blood sugar level at a very fast speed. So we should not take these fruits in such a manner so that the diabetic control should be good. And as far as the drugs are concerned, here in India or for most of the places, people think that oral hypoglycemics are good to have the control of diabetes. But the natural control of diabetes is mainly based on insulin. And if there is any complication associated with diabetes, like infection, like ischemic heart disease, like any other complication, particularly the sepsis, then it should be definitely controlled by insulin only. And the glycemic control by insulin gives better results as far as the outcome of the disease is concerned. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for a nice presentation.
What I wanted just to add to what Sir has elaborated on fruits. Regarding fruits, diabetic patients, they can take fruits which are rich in fibers. And it is not advised to diabetics to drink only the juice of fruits, because the fibers in the fruits have the ability to lower the glucose level. So they may take fruits, but which are rich in fibers, and this causes diabetic condition to lower them. But not juice, not the juice. The juice indeed is going to increase the sugar level. So it's good for diabetics to eat the fruit itself.
So we are very clear that oxidative stress is very important cause for these causative agent for these non-communicable diseases like diabetes, blood pressure, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and cancer also. And to prevent these diseases, we can use these functional foods or the nutraceuticals. Sir, can you give an idea of what a common person should add in his or her own diet to...
We usually say eat 5 fruits and 5 vegetables a day.
The advice is indeed eat 5 fruits and 5 vegetables per day. But here I see that there's a lot of ghee put in the food. We should perhaps reduce the amount of ghee and the amount of oil. Praveen? I think it's a good advice.
So it's good that we are having this session after the lunch.
But also, I would advise
To take tea without milk and without sugar. 3 cups per day.
So our retired director of JK Cancer is here, Professor R.K. Katia. Would you like to add something, sir?
Not anything much more about the diabetes, but I can say about the cancer, these dietary factors or the dietary food which are here, they have many property, many foods which we use, these fruits or the vegetables, whatever we are taking, if they are available in the pure form. But it is very unfortunate for our country that many of the things we are not getting in a pure form. If it is available in the pure form, it is very good, and they work as an accident. All sort of the vegetables, green leafy vegetables, whether it is cabbage or it's a cauliflower, or you can say the broccoli or tomato, ginger, whatever the things what we are eating daily in the day, our daily meals, they are all are anti-cancerous as well as the antioxidant. They reduce the oxyhydral group of the cancer which are going to promote it. So better to have all these vegetables, whatever are available in our Indian scenario, instead of going to the non-vegetarian diet. Only the non-vegetarian you can have the fish, which have a very good amount of the omega fatty acid 3, which is more potent to protect the cancer in the body of the patient. Thank you. We are not getting anything safe, sir, because they are everything is alternated. Whenever they are washing it, they are mixing some chemicals to wash these, and they are not hygienic to us.
Yeah, that is the main concern, how safe our vegetables are. If they are safe, then we are good. So, but for a common man, just like that now market we have organic vegetables like that.
We are not
Maybe
sure about
expensive.
whether we are getting these are
Yeah.
organic one.
So sometimes it
so
is-
they are marketing it at a very
Yeah.
high price.
Yeah, that is what I'm
We are
saying.
not sure whether these are actually.
So I think our concern should be on the farmer side, aware farmer side. There should be strict regulations are there, but no action or activity
we
be
will
done.
it is sir administration.
वो पीली गोभी जो है मार्केट में आते हैं तो सफेद हो जाती है, हरा बैंगन बैंगनी हो जाता
They
है.
are washing it in the chemicals,
Like
they are
that.
washing in the acid which is harmful, and this is causing a cancer again.
So
Whatever
I-
we are eating normally nowadays, it is
Yeah.
all are cancer. All the things which has the benzene ring,
Yeah.
they are carcinogenic.
Yeah, भगवान पे सब है, ईश्वर जो है.
Maybe one comment I make following Ashok, your question. How far have we gone regards to studies regarding pesticide contamination in our vegetables and fruits?
Yeah, that's right. We have done some studies like that, and it's unfortunate to say that even the lactating mother milk, if you see, you get the traces of pesticides.
But
That's a dangerous sign.
because there may be some lobbies as well from farmer associations or even
Yeah.
from government where when we want to indulge in serious studies regarding relating pesticide
वो अभी डॉक्टर साहब बोल गए ना कि पॉजिटिव बोलो, आलोचना मत करो, तो मैं आलोचना नहीं करता. But the fact is like that. You see, we are really not concerned about it. हमको तो कुछ और, we have some different priorities. Unfortunately, we don't have priorities on our health problems or like that on education.
has
problems.
become now a priority when we see what we are consuming.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, it is a priority during the academic sessions
Take
like
the
this
example of
conference.
nutrition. We were 9% in 4 years back
Yeah,
of cancer.
yeah.
Now we are 14%. I don't say that it is pesticide, but
Yeah.
we have a whole package of I would say, factors which come in.
Yeah, I think that we'll talk about it tomorrow.
And
But
the pesticide is because the use of the pesticides increased after about 30 years, 30, 40 years. Because earlier nobody is using but pesticide in the rural areas.
yeah.
But it was used only in the, to start with, it has started from the Punjab and then it come to all over India.
Yeah, that is why
Because
the highest.
to increase the fertility or to
Yeah.
increase the production of the food
Yeah.
grains, they are using these pesticides.
Yeah,
Or
so-
or the chemical manures which are more harmful for them.
Yeah, therefore, in Punjab, the
Because
cancer
all the
rate in the south
pesticides,
is higher.
sir, all the pesticides, all the manures, chemical manures which are available, they have the benzene rings. And the benzene derivative or benzene ring is the carcinogenic.
Yeah. That is what is important. Awareness is important. That is what I feel personally.
So thank you.
But during this last
We will
discussion,
take this last question now.
yeah, it becomes confusing the message. Are we saying that we should not eat fruits and vegetables? Or because in his last presentation he said that we should take at least 400 to 500 grams of fruits or 4 to 5 fruits in a day. And the later part of discussion conveys that we should not take fruits and vegetables. So what message we want to convey to the audience?
No, the question is not an issue concerning not to take fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
but you need to take clean fruits and clean vegetables if you want to get the nutrients that are going to mitigate certain pathways. But discussion went on the pesticides because we are currently using pesticide now or other chemicals to improve the quality of our fruits and vegetables, which in fact is to the detriment of health.
No, in the present context, there is no doubt that we should improve the quality of fruits and vegetables without pesticides. But in present context, should we take fruits or vegetables or not?
Yes, yes. In fact, all the data that we have gathered so far clearly show that the phytochemicals and the works that have been accompanying these data clearly indicate that these are useful for health.
I will conclude this session now with one advice which was given by a Harvard scientist. I was attending a course and they had said that even if it is not organic food, you must consume vegetables and fruits in plenty. If you are able to afford and get organic food, that's the best thing. Otherwise, you must have food, vegetarian food in your diet. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Tisha.
मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा डॉक्टर डी.के. गुप्ता सर से कृपया आए और हमारे स्पीकर और प्रोग्राम डायरेक्टर को सम्मानित